populating a poll. You can either enter the poll by selecting and then hitting edit at the top left corner of the screen, or you can double click it like this and enter the poll. The tab 1 is the bulk of the fields that you'll want to enter for this poll, but there are also 4 other tabs. One being the photos, which you can take all of the photos with the different angles and different categories already pre-labeled, pre-tagged, and some of them have much more options available if you scroll over. And there's the attachments tab, which we won't be covering in this video. And then the ID tab, that is the primary tab that we will be covering in this video. If you want more room to view the fields, you can minimize the imagery view. If you look at the top, you've got your reference number, that's 41. That was auto-generated when the poll was placed, and you can change that, of course, but you don't want to have 2 polls with the same reference number because it'll mess up your export, because you cannot have photos with the same name value, and the advanced processing, there are several things that can go wrong, but it won't even allow you to export until you have a unique number for every poll. Next to that, you'll see a yellow editing square. That, if you bring that up, a menu, you'll see that there are segment controls that allow you to choose how many characters you want to repeat as a default placeholder for each of the identification brandings that you can potentially populate. So if I have it set to 3 for tag 1 and then I tap outside to complete, you'll notice in where it says the yellow tag that says owner tag, you'll notice there are 3 characters in the placeholder, which is a default, and if you swipe to the left or the right on that text field, you will accept that default. Now let's just go back to that editor and go back to 5. So if you're in an area where all of the tags have the first 5 characters are the same, then you want to set that to 5. Now you can of course delete that, and now you'll notice that the placeholder has the first 5 digits. Now you can either swipe to accept it, or if you hit the stepper, it'll automatically bring up the 5 characters, and it'll allow you to step up in increments of 1. And the same applies if the last character is a alphanumeric like A, B, C. It will go up by 1 character as well. Now you'll also notice that a picture popped up, and that was because you took a picture of the poll tag before you started entering all this data. And that'll apply with all of the pertinent photos that you took of the identification brandings on the poll. So now you can easily copy that because it's right in your face. And let's just do that. 3, 5, 4, 4. So let's go up 1 and then add a 6. Enter. Now you'll notice that the other tags are not yellow because there are no pictures of those. But let's just say we had a transformer and we want to add a transformer tag. Let's go into the pictures, and I am not in the field right now, so I cannot take a picture of the transformer tag, but I can grab one from my pictures because I placed one there, recents, grab that, and now, oh, that's not a transformer tag, sorry, that's a switch tag. Let's delete that and add it to the switch tag. Now let's go back. You'll notice that the switch tag is yellow and it opened up the field for you. So if you click on there, you get it, and you can swipe if it's very similar. Oh, and look at how similar that actually is. Wow. I did not set that up. So then moving on, there are several identification fields there for your different tags on the poll. And we missed the vertical offset. That is an extremely important field. That will default to whatever you have in your settings. what that is that is a value, a vertical height value for what you want to use if you are shooting the height measurements for the attachments on the pole as a base figure. And it is common practice nowadays, I always do it, to mark a base height on the pole so that when you're shooting with your laser on your tripod, I recommend always using a tripod or your measurements are way off, you will always come back to that same base measurement, so that the grass and the canopy that is down around the ditch area where the base of the pole is, can be properly evaluated. So what you do is you go up to the pole and you stick your tape measure down to the base, what you consider to be the base of the pole, and then you make a mark at, and in this case it would be 1.5 meters from that base point, and you mark the pole there. Then every time you take a measurement with your laser on your tripod, you come back to that point if you have to restart your calculations. Typically, what it used to happen is people would take a shot from the base of the pole rather than a base offset, and they would be way off because of the foliage down there. And then if they had to restart their shots, they would end up taking a starting point at a different point because they can't see through all that brush. So this makes it far more accurate, and it has become very commonplace even when you're not using digital capture methods like with AmbrePole. Anyway, will probably be a whole dedicated video on vertical offsets, so don't worry if you didn't catch all that. Let's move on to, in fact, I'll do one out in the field. Okay, so here we have the full survey or a partial survey. Now, you might ask, what on earth, why is that pertinent? If you switch to the partial survey, the quality control tools that are in this application will change to a much more lax state, where there are several things that you won't have to do to get your pole to pass. And it's common, like if you're not doing attachment heights or collecting dip information, then you might choose that partial survey so that you can get a pass on your pole much easier. And the pass is not to say that you can't export this information, but you really don't want to until you get it passed. And you can fine-tune those requirements in the settings, which will also be in another video. But for now, so we'll do a full survey for now. Then you have what type of a pole. It's almost always inline because you don't end up surveying your adjacent poles or your drop poles, but you do often survey your guy poles. So it's usually an inline and sometimes a guy. PT stands for pole transfer. If you select that, then it just gives you a choice of new pole or stub pole, because sometimes you are required to survey the old stub pole. For example, if the ownership of the stub pole was different, maybe the comm provider owned the pole and now the new pole's put in by power, that needs to be known. And then there are certain design houses that want to know everything about that stub pole, but that's up to you to decide. For common practice, all you need to do is tell the output that you're going to be surveying the new pole. So then you move on to the address information, and this is a beautiful feature because it goes to the Apple Maps database and it grabs all of the information that you would get if you were using an application such as Google Earth or Google Maps, and it selects the closest address to the coordinate that you place this pole at. And sometimes that is a little bit off because that information, that Apple Maps or Google database has not been updated to a fine precision point. And so your address might be off a little bit, or maybe even the road line is off by 10 meters or so. But if you're in a city location, it's almost always accurate. So you can just swipe that whole thing to get those values. If you have an intersecting street, if you're at a corner, then you can add that other street if your design house wants to know that information. Let's just say that the maps database grabbed the intersecting street. You could just go like that and then type in the proper street here, but we won't do that right now. Then also you can choose what relation to the pole the position on the property is. Say you don't have an address at the pole location, you could take the address across the street, say 601, if it was 601, and then choose opposite. So then we move on to the branded stamp information. All these fields, most of them are familiar to anyone who's doing this survey for a living, but a lot of this stuff is new because it is now a digital application as opposed to an old clipboard application. So anyway, if you swipe the type of pole, wood is the most common one. You'll notice wood has more attributes, so the section expands. Then you can choose your pole height. Now let's just say you only deal with 5 or 6 different heights, and the rest are just in your face and you don't want them there. You can edit and delete the ones that are not common. There's not a whole lot of 100-footers. Actually, I surveyed one the other day that was 95 feet and it was a wood pole. That was pretty cool. So you can then select or you could have just swiped to accept. Now you'll notice that the power utilities are red and the comm utilities are blue. Well, that becomes important because a lot of things will be determined by whether your utility that you're adding or you're choosing as an ownership, whether it's a power or a comm, a lot of things downstream will be affected. So if you're adding a utility to this list, let's just say Hydro 1 is one that's out here. Popular, although I probably have it already in this list, but you got to make sure you choose the correct entry here, whether it's a power item or a comm utility. Now you'll notice that it's at the very bottom and it's Hydro 1 and it's red. Now I can edit and bring that up and you'll see it's already there, so now I got it twice, but so because it's there twice, we'll get rid of it. Anyway, there's how you custom edit your selection lists. Now, an interesting thing here is that if you survey multiple areas or multiple clients, you'll probably have a whole different set of criteria, and you'll notice your list is growing too long. So what you can do is you can save these lists and the settings for your application as a setting set, and then reload them when you come back to that customer or region for survey. So going back to our population, we've got an owner of Bell. Now let's just say I swipe joint or let's just say I swipe power. Now you'll notice that the owner went red because it's already starting our quality control here. If you had chosen joint, as soon as I started to add some attachments, it would start to evaluate whether it really was a bulk bell pole or whether it was a joint pole, and then color code those things as wrong or potentially wrong or correct. Most of the QC will not start at this point because we're barely started the population. So then the class. We've taken the picture of the stamp, so now you can enter all of the class pertinent values to, we put 45 there, let's make that 60. WCR, CCA, correct, 14, 2014, all you have to enter is the 14. Any of the dates, you only need to enter the portion, the last 2 digits, or if it was, say, year 2000, all you'd have to put is a 0. Install nails, very important. If you took a picture of the install nails, it would show up, but very important to distinguish between the manufacturer. The installed nails often has the ownership abbreviated letters on the nails, so it is a very key thing to collect the information for in these types of surveys. These poles did not have ownership nails. We found out that they were all owned by the power utility, which was Electra, so they did not have ownership nails. Moving on, we go to the condition of the pole, and most of them are visually okay, and sometimes you need a second crew, or maybe you have the training for it, to do a proper inspection of the integrity of the pole, and they'll often do the hammer test. But if you're just getting the base information, you can either choose visually okay or inspection recommended. If the inspection recommended is chosen, then you get a choice to write whatever you want in there, and because it's usually only a few things that you put in there, I decided to make it where it is a pop-up list that you can edit, and it is a permanent entry, a permanent value. So let's just choose decay at base. Now that entry will end up in your two-dimensional drafts of the pole, so don't just put random arbitrary notes in there. This is if it really didn't pass, or you really don't think it's going to pass. And then of course the downstream engineering crew can determine whether your note was valid enough to put in that draft section, and it will be highlighted in red if it is not visually okay. It will also appear on the profile outputs as well, where you get a 2-page profile output. So then there's just, is it an ambiguous grade? What that means is the pole just been placed, and so the grade hasn't even been set, the saw's not in place, but you can tell the construction is still ongoing, so you could just put ambiguous grade, because all your attachment heights will be off because they haven't finished setting the grade height. So, pole has a lean. Here's a handy feature. A lot of poles have a lean, and as a surveyor, you're like, should I record this? Oh, it'll take too long. Where's it going to pop up? Where's it going to show? Who's going to see it? Well, here we have dedicated spot for it and dedicated fields in the output. So it's usually hard to tell to the actual degree, so we've got it set so that you can align your pole by 5 degrees at a time, and you can enlarge the picture so that you can actually hold it up to the pole and pretty much get it to the degree when you hold it upright if you're standing in the right position. Rather than using a device, this works just as well, and it's way faster. Now, if you really want it to be, say, 12 degrees instead of 10 or 15, just tap outside, or just tap it again to reduce it. You can actually enter the field and type in 12. There you have it. Now you have several spots for for just general notes, comments, that's what I was meaning to say. And you can either type it all in. Here's finally a field where you just type in regularly. And it's just notes that you know that your team, your downstream team, will want to see. And then if it's a common note, it's like on every other pole or something, you can just swipe to accept it. And if you were to swipe to accept this note down here, and rather than having to cut and paste it and put it in the first field, as soon as you press save, all the notes move up to the highest location, so don't worry. And then there's a dedicated make ready note if you're collecting make it ready information, such as raise power to 0.5 meters to clear something or other. There you have a make ready note. Now we have a survey tools section, and that is for your own use or your fellow surveyors' use, or maybe a quality control QCer that is going to look at your work. You can, especially if you're new and you just don't know if you filled out everything correctly, you can check that and then leave a note saying something like, please verify ownership. That's a common one, right? Ownership, because A lot of times you can't figure out ownership when you're new. So now this pole is flagged yellow, and the person, a manager or a QCer, can look through this, and any of the flagged poles, they can look at the notes. Or you can just leave a note for yourself too. Like if you have to come back to finish something, this is a great spot to put it. And you can change that flag color, so you will have 2 different things or 3 different things that you want to flag the poles to identify. You can use different flag colors. The next time you go to flag a pole, it'll default to the last color, but you can change them all individually. This only changes the color for this pole and then sets the default for the ongoing poles. So then we have the coordinates, and there's very, very rare instances where you would ever want to change that, but you can apply it and then it will actually move. For example, say you had the exact coordinates of some poles and you wanted it to be precise, you could copy those coordinates in there and apply them rather than manually move the pole on the screen. Here's a great feature for non-linear survey, where the altitudes are required so that they can calculate all the elevations into all the design and the calc software. So what happens is you turn on your GPS, and in fact you just keep that running in the background if you're required to get those, and you can also turn on the settings to force you to get this every time so that you don't forget to get it. Now you'll notice it's red, the tag, because I'm indoors and I'm not going to get better than 10 meter accuracy, but as soon as it kicks in, it'll start to give you a measurement, a VDOP measurement, which is the accuracy level of the iPhone, in this case the iPhone GPS vertical accuracy, and that will go down to like 2-3 meters just using the iPhone, which is probably good enough for most uses. Although you can Bluetooth to an external device to get even more so. So when you go to capture it, what happens, that'll go green, by the way, once it gets below, I forget if it's 5 or 10 meters. And then when you go to capture it, you'll see an option to type in your vertical offset. In other words, if you're not holding the iPhone at the base of the pole or on the same plane, you're not going to get the correct height or altitude. So you can enter, say you're standing at the bottom of a hill and you're looking up at the pole, and you know you're exactly 3 meters from the base of that pole, which is unlikely to know exactly if you're that far away, but say that was a situation. You could enter -3 because you're at the bottom of the hole, right? So of the hill. So -3 meters, and as soon as you hit enter, you get your 3 meters. And because it is still, because I have an accurate value in there, I can now capture it, and you'll notice that the VDOP value is recorded so that you can alert your team of the accuracy when you captured that value, so that they can either accept your value or they can disregard it because it's just too far off. So that is the end of the first tab, and we will save the other tabs for another video. Thanks very much, and I hope you gained a lot of that from this tutorial. Bye-bye.